I didn't have a choice. I needed to move, and I needed to move fast. The apartment I found wasn't anything special, just an old one-bedroom in an ancient building downtown. The kind of place with high ceilings and heavy doors, where everything creaks just a little too much. It smelled like old books and dust, like it had soaked in the history of everyone who'd ever lived there. But I didn't care. The rent was low, the lease was flexible, and after couch hopping for weeks while looking for a place, I just wanted somewhere mine. I should have known something was off. The landlord, Ron, was a wiry guy in his late 50s, with deep lines in his face and the air of someone who had long since stopped giving a shit. He barely looked up from his clipboard when he showed me the place. All the basics. Heat works. Water works. No parties, no pets. Rent's due on the 1st. Got any questions? I hesitated, glancing at the odd stairwell right outside my unit. It was the first thing I noticed when I stepped onto my floor. The building had 3 floors, and my apartment was at the very end of the 3rd. But right beside my door there was a short flight of stairs leading up. Except they didn't go anywhere. They just ended. About 8 steps up, the staircase stopped abruptly at a solid wall, like someone had bricked up an entrance decades ago. The wood of the stairs was worn, like people had still been walking up and down for years, even though there was nowhere to go. "What's with that?" I asked, pointing at the useless staircase. Ron didn't even glance at it. "Nothing. Just an old part of the building. Sealed up ages ago." "Why'd they seal it?" "Beats me." He handed me the lease. "You signing or not?" I should have asked more questions. Pressed him a little. But at the time I didn't think much of it. Weird, sure, but old buildings always had strange quirks, right? I signed the lease that night and moved in the next day. For the first couple of nights, everything was fine. I unpacked my stuff, ordered some takeout, even sat out on my tiny balcony and watched the city hum around me. The place was a little drafty, and the pipes groaned like they were alive, but it wasn't anything I couldn't deal with. Then came the 3rd night. I woke up suddenly. Not to any noise, not to any nightmare. Just that gut-deep feeling that something wasn't right. I glanced at my phone. 3:07 a.m. I was about to roll over and go back to sleep when I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Coming from right outside my door. I froze. My apartment was at the very end of the hall. No one had any reason to be up here. And yet, clear as day, I heard the distinct sound of someone walking up those useless stairs. Step by step by step. Then silence. The footsteps had stopped right outside my door. I sat up, barely breathing, my heart hammering against my ribs. I strained my ears, listening for anything. A cough. A shuffle. The creak of weight shifting. Nothing. Just thick, suffocating quiet. After a few minutes, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe the sound had come from the apartment below. Maybe the old pipes were playing tricks on me. I forced myself to lie back down, pulled the blankets up to my chin, squeezed my eyes shut. Then, just as I started drifting off, a knock. Not a loud one. Not frantic. Just a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap against my door. I bolted upright so fast my vision swam. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was standing out there. Right outside. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock didn't come again. The footsteps didn't return. I sat awake, staring at my door, until the first light of morning seeped in through the window. When the sun was fully up, I finally found the courage to check the hallway. The stairwell looked the same as ever. Dusty. Empty. Like it hadn't been touched in years. No footprints. No sign that anyone had been there at all. I swallowed hard. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. The door to my apartment had a peephole. But it was useless, because someone had covered it from the outside. I didn't leave my apartment that morning. Not right away. Instead, I just stood there staring at my door, my stomach twisted in a knot so tight it felt like I was going to be sick. The peephole was covered. Not blocked by tape, not stuffed with paper, just covered. As if something was pressed against it from the other side. When I moved, the tiny circle of darkness shifted with me, like something was watching me move. I took a slow step back. My skin prickled. Then, just like that, the peephole was clear again. I didn't hear anything. No footsteps retreating. No rustle of movement. Just 1 second it was blocked and the next it wasn't. I swallowed hard, trying to force my brain to logic its way through this. Maybe it had been my imagination. Maybe there was something stuck on the outside and it just fell off. But I didn't hear anything fall. And I knew what I'd heard last night. I spent the next hour pacing my tiny apartment, my mind running in frantic circles. I wanted to check the hallway, wanted to confirm that no one was there, but the idea of opening the door made my skin crawl. What if someone was waiting on the other side? What if the second I turned the knob, I heard footsteps running toward me? So I waited until well after 9 a.m. when I could hear my downstairs neighbor leave for work. Then I finally worked up the nerve. I cracked the door open just an inch. The hallway was empty. The stairwell was empty. Nothing was out of place. I forced myself to step out, glancing around. The hallway smelled like dust and old carpet, the air stale in a way that made me feel like no one ever spent time up here. I turned to the staircase. The stairs were coated in a thin layer of dust, the kind that should have shown footprints if someone had been walking on them. But there weren't any. My pulse pounded in my ears. I felt like I was going crazy. Maybe I was going crazy. Maybe I was sleep-deprived, or maybe my brain was overreacting to the creaks and groans of an old-ass building. Still, I didn't sleep much the next night. I left my lamp on, kept the TV playing low in the background, anything to make the room feel less empty. I stayed up past 3 a.m., staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. No footsteps. No knocking. No covered peephole. I was relieved. Almost convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. Then on the fifth night, I woke up to a sound that turned my blood to ice. It was the sound of my doorknob turning. I shot up in bed so fast my vision went white. My breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't someone knocking. It wasn't footsteps in the hallway. Someone was trying to come inside. The knob rattled slightly as if whoever was on the other side was testing it, seeing if it was locked. I had locked it. I knew I had locked it. I held my breath, waiting, my heart hammering so loud I swore it would give me away. I had a baseball bat under my bed, bought it the same week I moved in, because the neighborhood wasn't exactly great, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't move. Because some deep, primal part of me knew if I made a sound, whoever was out there would know I was awake. The knob stopped moving. Silence. Then, a single, slow, deliberate tap on the door. Goosebumps exploded up my arms. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I don't know how long I sat there, my back pressed against the headboard, staring at my door. But eventually morning light crept in through my window. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, my phone alarm was going off and the sun was up. My first thought was, maybe it was a dream. Then I climbed out of bed and saw the door. The deadbolt was still locked. The chain was still latched. But the doorknob? It was turned all the way to the open position. Like someone had been standing on the other side. Holding it. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick, which was bullshit because I felt fine physically at least. But mentally, my brain was fried. I couldn't focus on anything except the fact that someone had been standing on the other side of my door last night. Holding the knob. Turning it. I didn't imagine it. I didn't dream it. It happened. The problem was I had no idea who. A neighbor? A drunk who got lost? Some creep from the street who managed to get into the building? Or worse, was it the same person I'd heard on the stairs? The one who knocked? The one who had blocked the peephole? I paced my apartment for hours, jumping at every little sound. The faint hum of the fridge made my heart lurch. The pipes in the walls groaned and I damn near had a heart attack. Every time the floor creaked, I found myself listening, frozen in place, waiting to hear if the sound came from inside my apartment or just outside. I needed answers. So around noon, I forced myself to do something I should have done days ago. I knocked on my neighbor's door. Her name was Lisa, mid-30s, the kind of woman who looked like she was always running late but didn't give a shit. When she opened the door, she had a phone tucked under her chin and a cigarette in one hand, even though we weren't supposed to smoke inside. She gave me a quick once-over, probably noticing the dark circles under my eyes and the way I kept glancing at the stairwell. "Yeah," she said, barely looking at me. I cleared my throat. "Hey, sorry to bother you. Do you ever hear anything at night? Like footsteps in the hall?" Lisa didn't even blink. She took a slow drag of her cigarette. "You mean the stairs?" Something in my stomach turned over. "Yeah." Her face was unreadable. "You heard him." It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "Who?" Lisa exhaled a long stream of smoke. Then she muttered, almost like she didn't want to say it too loud. "The guy on the stairs." A chill ran down my spine. I gripped the doorframe, my knuckles going white. I didn't even have to ask who she was talking about. I knew. I heard footsteps the other night, I said, voice tight. Late. Like 3 in the morning. Lisa nodded like this was completely normal. Yeah, he comes around then. I felt lightheaded. So, someone actually does come up here? It's not just the building settling. Lisa's expression darkened. She lowered her voice. You didn't open the door, did you? My mouth went dry. No, I whispered. But, last night someone tried the doorknob. Lisa went rigid. For the first time since I knocked, she actually looked rattled. He doesn't do that, she muttered. The way she said it made my skin crawl. What do you mean? I asked. She shook her head, then flicked the ash from her cigarette into a coffee mug on her table. Look, man, I don't know who he is. No one does. But he's been here forever. I've been in this building 6 years and he's always been around. You hear the steps, you hear the knock, but he never touches the doors. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Well, he touched mine. Lisa's face went pale. We stood there in silence, the tension thick enough to choke on. Finally, I asked the one question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Have you ever seen him? Lisa took a long drag of her cigarette. Then without a word she shut the door in my face. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I kept every light in my apartment on, dragged a chair in front of the door and sat there, bat gripped tight in my hands. Midnight. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. My eyelids got heavy. My body ached from sitting so tense for so long. My thoughts started to blur. I checked my phone. 2:59 a.m. Then, thump. My stomach clenched. Thump, thump, thump. I gripped the bat so tight my knuckles cracked. The footsteps climbed the stairs, slow and deliberate, until they stopped. Right outside my door. Silence. I held my breath, waiting. The air in my apartment felt wrong. Thick, suffocating. Like something unseen had seeped through the walls, into the room with me. My body screamed at me to move, to run, but I was frozen. Then, the doorknob turned. I saw it happen. I watched it twist to the open position just like the night before. The chain lock rattled. And then, from just inches away, a whisper. Not a voice. Not words. Just the sound of breathing. Slow. Hollow. Right on the other side of the door. I wanted to scream. I wanted to push the chair back, run for the fire escape, anything to get away from the thing standing outside. Then just like that, it stopped. The knob turned back to normal. The heavy silence settled again. I stayed in that chair until sunrise, my body drenched in sweat. When I finally worked up the nerve to check the hallway, I opened the door just an inch, just enough to peek out. The stairwell was empty, but this time there were footprints in the dust. They led up the stairs, but not back down. That I didn't know what to do anymore. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think straight. I felt like I was losing my mind. The footprints were gone by morning. Just gone. I told myself I'd imagined it. That I was sleep deprived. That maybe the building had settled, and I had been too freaked out to really pay attention. But deep down I knew the truth. There was something in this building. Something wrong. I called in sick to work again. The hours dragged by as I sat in my apartment, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe a voice, maybe a knock. Maybe someone actually coming through that door. Just to confirm that I wasn't imagining the whole thing. But nothing came. The day passed in a haze. My phone buzzed a few times with messages from friends asking how I was doing, but I couldn't even bring myself to respond. I needed answers. So the next day I went back to Lisa's apartment. She wasn't there when I knocked. In fact, it took a while for anyone to even answer, but when the door finally creaked open, it wasn't Lisa standing there. It was a man. A tall, thin guy with hollow eyes and a messy beard. He looked like he just crawled out of a cave and wasn't happy about it. His eyes were dark, like he hadn't seen the sun in years, and when he looked at me, it felt like he was staring straight through me. "You looking for Lisa?" he asked in a voice that made my skin crawl. "Yeah. Is she here?" The man glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "She's not here right now. You need something." I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to trust him, but at that moment I didn't care. I needed answers. I've been hearing things. Strange noises. Footsteps. A knock at the door. I swallowed hard. Do you know anything about that? He stared at me for a long time. Too long. Then with a slow, deliberate motion, he stepped back into the apartment and gestured for me to follow him. I should have turned around and left. I should have walked away, gone back to my own place and forgotten about this whole nightmare. But I didn't. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled like mold and stale cigarettes. There were piles of newspapers and old boxes stacked up in the corners. The kind of place you wouldn't want to touch with your bare hands. The man led me to the small living room, where a single chair sat facing a cracked window, the blinds half drawn. "You hear him, don't you?" he said quietly. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "He's always there," the man continued, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear him. "Watching. Waiting. Who is he?" The man didn't answer right away. He just stared at the wall like he was looking for something that wasn't there. Finally, he turned back to me. "You want to know who he is?" He laughed, but it was a hollow sound, like it came from deep within the earth. "The better question is what he is." Before I could respond, he reached down and pulled a small, weathered notebook from the table beside him. It was covered in smudges, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. He opened it to a page near the middle and showed it to me. The handwriting was messy, jagged. The words were barely legible, but I could make out enough to understand what it said. "The man who watches the stairs." I felt my stomach twist. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man's eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than emptiness in his gaze. "You'll never escape him," he said, his voice sharp, almost frantic. "He's been here longer than anyone. Longer than this building, longer than me. He's always watching. Always waiting. And if you see him, if you ever open that door, there's no going back." I stepped back, my pulse hammering in my ears. "What do you mean?" But the man didn't answer. He just slammed the notebook shut and shoved it back into the drawer, locking it with a shaking hand. He turned to face me, and for the first time, I realized how deep his fear ran. This wasn't just some crazy guy living in a rundown apartment. There was real terror in his eyes. "You have to leave," he said, his voice urgent. "Leave now. While you still can." I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I turned and bolted out of the apartment. I didn't stop running until I was back in my own. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I locked every single door. I chained the windows shut. I pulled the curtains closed, turned on all the lights, and sat in the middle of the floor, my bat in my hands. I wasn't going to let him in. I wasn't going to let him get me. And yet, I couldn't stop the creeping dread that settled over me. What was he? Who was he? I tried to stay awake. I tried to keep my eyes open, tried to stay alert. But sleep claimed me anyway. At precisely 3 a.m., I heard it again. The footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Step by step. Right outside my door. And this time, the knocking came. But it wasn't just a tap. It was a bang. Louder. Harder. A thundering knock that rattled the door in its frame. And when I tried to open my eyes, I saw him. Standing in the hallway. Tall. Thin. Hollow. Watching. Waiting. He was real. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. There was no mistaking it. The figure standing in the hallway wasn't a shadow or a trick of the light. It was real. His figure loomed tall and unnaturally thin, his face hollow, like the skin was stretched too tight across his skull. The hallway light flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. I could see the outline of him more clearly now, his dark eyes staring straight at me, unmoving, like he was waiting for something. Waiting for me? I wanted to scream. I wanted to rush for the door and run out of my apartment, but my body was paralyzed. The fear was so intense that my legs refused to obey me. I was stuck in place, frozen, staring back at him, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The knock came again. Bang! The door shook under the force of it. I flinched, the sound cutting through the thick silence of the apartment. I could hear his breathing now, slow and ragged, a noise that seemed to come from deep inside his chest. I couldn't take my eyes off him, and somehow I knew he was waiting for me to move. But I didn't. I couldn't. Then, with an almost deliberate slowness, he took a step forward. His footfalls echoed through the hallway like something from a nightmare, each step deliberate, measured. I watched him as he moved closer to my door. The air in my apartment grew colder, the temperature dropping so quickly that I could see my breath mist in front of me. I closed my eyes for a moment, hoping that when I opened them, he'd be gone. But when I opened them again, he was still there, inches from the door. I could feel him there, waiting. My skin was crawling, every instinct screaming at me to get out, to escape, to do something. But I stayed frozen. I stayed silent. The knocking came again. Bang! 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 The door shuddered. The sound rang through my skull, vibrating in my bones, filling the silence of the apartment. And then I heard something else. A whisper. It was barely audible at first, but it grew louder with each passing second. "I'm here." The voice was raspy, like it had been in use for years, and it echoed through the space, creeping under my skin. I jerked back from the door. My breath came in shallow gasps as the realization hit me all at once. This wasn't just some random person. It wasn't some drunk or burglar trying to break in. This was the man from the stairs. He was real. And he was here to watch. The air felt suffocating. I couldn't think. Couldn't focus. My mind was a swirl of panic and confusion. What do I do? How do I get out of this? I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaking beneath me. I had to get away. I had to get out of the apartment. But I couldn't. The hallway was right there. The man was right there. I backed away from the door, inch by inch, my heart racing. The sound of his breathing grew louder, more intense, almost urgent. I couldn't tell if he was getting closer or if the walls were closing in on me. "I'm here." The whisper came again, closer this time. It was like he was speaking directly into my ear. And then, as if the universe had decided I'd suffered enough, I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. A loud, violent crash. The door to the stairwell above me slammed open with such force it rattled the walls. The sound was so unexpected, so sudden that I couldn't react at first. My heart skipped a beat. I almost didn't want to know what was happening. But I couldn't help myself. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to listen. Another crash. Another loud noise, like something heavy had been thrown down the stairs. And then footsteps. Heavy, pounding footsteps, each one harder and faster than the last. It was like someone was running, coming down the stairs toward my door as if they knew exactly where I was. I stumbled back from the door, my chest tight, my mind a mess of confusion. Then there was a knock. Bang! 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 But this time it wasn't the man outside. The sound was coming from somewhere else. I rushed to the window and yanked the blinds open, desperate to see anything, to get a glimpse of what was happening. The hallway was empty. There was nothing there. The footsteps stopped. The knocking stopped. But the sense of something lingering remained. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed Lisa's number. It rang. And rang. And just when I thought she wouldn't pick up, she did. "Hello," she said, her voice rough and tired. "Lisa, you need to listen to me. You need to." But before I could finish my sentence, I heard something on the other end. A low guttural noise. Like breathing. Slow breathing. I didn't wait to hear more. I dropped the phone and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby. When I looked back, I swear I saw him. Watching Dot, I thought leaving would help. I thought that maybe if I just got out of the apartment, away from that building, everything would feel normal again. But as soon as I stepped into the lobby, I realized how wrong I was. The feeling of being watched, the cold, suffocating dread, it followed me. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the street. The fresh air hit me like a slap in the face, but it didn't clear my head. I couldn't shake the image of that man, his hollow eyes, his face stretched too thin, his breath like something ancient and wrong. I needed help. Real help. But who would believe me? Who would understand what was happening? I called the police. As soon as the phone rang, I felt a twinge of doubt. Maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe I'd let my imagination get the best of me. I hadn't slept in days. Maybe it was all just the product of my exhausted mind. But when the dispatcher answered, I could hear the urgency in my own voice. I need someone to come to 254 Pine Street, I stammered. There's something wrong with the building. There's a man, he's been watching me. I don't know who he is, but he's real. And I'm scared. The dispatcher paused. Ma'am, are you sure you're okay? It sounds like you might be feeling. No, I'm not crazy. Please just send someone. I swear something's wrong. There was a long silence. Then I'm sending an officer over. Stay where you are. Don't go back to the apartment. I agreed, though every part of me wanted to rush back to check on my apartment to make sure I wasn't alone. The wait felt like hours. My mind raced, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing in the hallway just waiting. Finally, the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out of the squad car, one a short, burly guy, the other tall and lean, with a sharp jawline and a look of someone who'd seen it all. They approached me slowly, cautiously, like I might break apart if they got too close. "You the one who called?" the burly one asked. I nodded. "We'll take a look around." "Stay here," the tall officer said, his voice firm but kind. I watched them go into the building, my heart still pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected. I didn't think they'd find anything. But something in my gut told me that this wouldn't end the way I wanted it to. Minutes later, they came back. Both officers were pale, their expressions grim. The tall one spoke first. "We checked the building. No one's there, ma'am. Not a soul. No one's been in the stairwell or near your apartment." I stared at them, disbelieving. "What do you mean? You didn't find anything?" The burly officer cleared his throat. "We went through every floor. We even checked the fire escapes and the roof. There's no sign of anyone, but that's not the weird part." I blinked. "Then what is?" The tall officer's voice lowered. "There's something off about that building. It's like it's been abandoned for years. Except clearly it's not. The walls are in good shape, everything seems fine. But we couldn't find anyone." I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I felt lightheaded. "What does that mean?" The burly officer shook his head. "Look, we're not saying it's haunted, but something's definitely off. We've been on the force long enough to know when something doesn't feel right." I was shaking now. "But the man. He was there. I saw him." The tall officer stepped closer, his expression softening. "Maybe you saw someone else. We didn't find any footprints. We didn't find any evidence of anyone living in that building. We'll send a patrol car to keep an eye on it, all right?" I stared at them, but I couldn't make sense of their words. It was all too much. Too unreal. They left, and I was alone again. I sat on the curb outside the building for hours, too terrified to go back inside, too terrified to go anywhere else. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming for me, that the man would be waiting when I returned. As night fell, I felt a strange pull, like I had no choice but to go back, like I was being summoned. I didn't know how long I sat there before I stood up and turned toward the building. My feet moved on their own, my legs carrying me toward that cursed door. I felt it before I saw it, the weight of something watching me. The door creaked open and I stepped inside, the air heavy and thick. I knew I shouldn't go up to my apartment, but I did anyway. The elevator was out of order, so I took the stairs. I didn't even hesitate. I had to get this over with. I climbed higher and higher, each step feeling like it took me deeper into something I couldn't escape. When I reached the top floor, the hallway looked just as it had when I first arrived. Nothing had changed. But somehow it felt different. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The cold. The silence. And then just as I reached my door, I heard it. A soft whisper, so quiet it almost seemed like my imagination. "Come closer." I froze. My blood ran cold. The door opened on its own. The man was standing there. He wasn't just in the hallway anymore. He was inside my apartment. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, staring at him as he stood just inside my apartment, his dark eyes locked onto mine. There was no escape now. The man from the stairs was here. The door had opened on its own, and yet there was no sign of a breeze, no reason for it. It just swung open, like it was being beckoned by some unseen force. And the man? He didn't step into the light. He just watched, standing there in the shadows, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. His face was gaunt, hollowed out, skin stretched so thin across his skull that it looked like it might tear at any moment. His hair, greasy and matted, hung over his face, but I could see his lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile. It was the kind of smile that chilled you to the bone, like he knew something you didn't. I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my chest burning with the need to scream, but the words wouldn't come. It was like my entire body had betrayed me, leaving me unable to even move. And then he moved. His feet slid across the floor silently, almost as if he were gliding rather than walking. Every step was deliberate, slow, like he was savoring the moment, like he enjoyed the fear radiating off of me. I felt the weight of his gaze, like a heavy hand pressing down on my chest. I wanted to turn and run, to flee, but something inside me knew I couldn't. "Why?" I finally managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my own heart. The man didn't answer. Instead, he took another step forward. And another. The closer he got, the colder the air became. It felt like the temperature dropped by degrees with every movement he made. Like he was sucking all the warmth out of the room. "Who are you?" I tried again, my voice trembling. Still no answer. Just that same slow, deliberate pace. He was so close now that I could smell him. A sharp, rotten odor like something dead had been left to rot for days. I gagged. The smell so overwhelming that it felt like it was crawling into my lungs, filling me with nausea. Then with a sickening slowness he stopped. He was right in front of me now, his face inches from mine. I could see every line, every hollowed-out part of his face. His lips parted, and for the first time I thought he might speak. But he didn't. Instead, his hand shot out. Clasp. He grabbed my wrist with a grip so tight it made my skin burn. And just like that, I was dragged into the apartment, his hand pulling me toward him with unnatural strength. I tried to pull away to fight, but my body felt like lead. My legs buckled under the weight of his touch, and I could hear myself gasping for air, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. The apartment was silent, too silent. The walls seemed to close in on me, the lights flickering in and out like they were struggling to stay alive. His eyes never left mine as he dragged me into the center of the room, and for the first time I realized something that made the blood run cold in my veins. This wasn't about me. This was about him. He wasn't there to hurt me. He wasn't even there to scare me. He was just watching and waiting for something I couldn't quite understand. It wasn't until that moment, right in the center of my apartment, that I realized the truth. The man wasn't living in the building. He was a part of it. He was tied to that place, like a shadow left behind by something far older than I could comprehend. He wasn't a person. He was a part of the building's history, its past, someone or something that had been forgotten by time but still lingering, still watching, waiting. Now, I was part of that history. I don't know what happened next. My memory becomes blurry after that. One minute I was standing there, staring into those dark eyes, feeling that pull, that strange connection to him. The next minute I was on the floor, gasping for breath, and the man was gone. The apartment was quiet again. Too quiet. The air was still cold, but the oppressive weight of his presence had lifted, like he'd never been there at all. I don't know how long I sat there, my body trembling, my mind a mess. But when I finally managed to stand up, the hallway was empty. The door was still wide open, and I could see the stairs, dark and silent, stretching upward into nothingness. I never went back to that apartment. I couldn't. The building still stands, I suppose, but I don't know who lives there now. And I don't ever want to know. But every night at 3 a.m. I hear it. The footsteps. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel a cold breath on the back of my neck. I know he's still there, waiting. And I can't forget the whisper that haunts my dreams. Come closer. And that's the end of the story, folks. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. If you've had any experiences like this, or you've been in a place that felt like it had eyes, please let me know. I'm not crazy, I know what I saw. I just don't know why he's still watching.